And welcome back, everybody, to the Triple Commit podcast. I am Morky Mork, I'm your host, and I'm joined today by two absolutely fabulous gentlemen. On this side, we have a regional winner, coach in Team Queso's Nick, and then on the other side, we have, of course, one of the biggest influencers of the one scene in the world right now, in my opinion, and that is Fear. How are you both doing, lads?
I'm doing great.
Doing good, man. Doing good.
I can imagine you're doing great, Nick. I can imagine you're still not off that high yet.
We're not quite.
And Fear as well, your number one list, your top 10 list. Of course, the last one came out yesterday. So very, very interesting indeed. Very, very interesting to see who was top and who was number 10. But have you had fun with that? Have you been having fun with that? Or has it been a bit of a pain?
You mean the top 10 list?
Yeah.
Oh, the top 10 list is fun, man. Everybody loves talking about lists, and it always gets so much discussion going. But I've scheduled those tweets a long time ago, to be honest with you. I had the top 10 for a while. So I'm not running those each day. So they're kind of in the back of my head. But yeah, I love making lists. People just, there's so many silly arguments over them, and it's great.
Absolutely is. So I suppose we have to start talking about the big story since we have one of the names here, and that is of course Team Queso taking down the best Europe had to offer in convincing fashion at the weekend. How are you feeling after all that, Nick? How was the emotions afterwards? I heard the comms after, and they seemed very, very happy. But how was it really after?
I think we're just super excited for the next regional. And I like that mindset as a team because there's a lot of teams like, I know Johnny's talked about it a lot. Like there's a lot of super immature pros in the scene who either don't keep hours, don't show up on time, all that good stuff. All my guys, all their hours have just been going up and up even after the regional win. Like we're already back to scrimming today. We have 3 or 4 tomorrow. Like they all still have that hunger to keep winning, which is great. It's really rare to see in teams. Like I've worked with a couple older teams. Like I know with Furia, I butted heads with a lot of the players because I wanted them on 100 plus hours, or not 100 plus, but like 70 plus hours past two. I think that's relatively reasonable if you're a pro in anything that's 35 hours a week. And that's where we butt heads. These guys, I don't have to tell them, and they're like 90 to 100. It's great.
Yeah, it must be absolutely phenomenal. And I suppose, the whole situation, how did it feel taking down teams like BDS, like Dignitas, like Williams Resolve, that absolutely incredible upper bracket semi-final? That was one of the games of the tournament, in my opinion. Absolutely phenomenal showing from both sides.
Yeah.
How does it feel to take out some of the best teams in not just Europe, but the world?
I think overall, we kind of came into this split with a few goals. I was trying to pull them up on my second monitor. Our goals were get a better Game 5, Game 7 record. Because I don't know if you looked at all last split. I think we went 2-11 through goals in Game 5s or Game 7s, which is horrible. And it was quite literally, if we can score one more goal some games, we are in that top 5. Because I think 6 of our 9 losses last split were to BDS, Endpoint, and Dig. and they were the 3 best teams in Europe. So if that's our issue is getting one more game on those teams, I think we always knew we could accomplish that super easily. It's just a full mental shift that we've had over the break. So honestly, the break was super helpful for us to be able to go, we can do this. And that top 8 at the end of the fall split where we finally proved to ourselves, because we always knew we could be one of the best in Europe, but we proved we can take down these teams. Specifically with that, like Game 5 against Misfits. In the fall, Regional 3, we proved to ourselves we can do it. Let's just grow from here.
Yeah.
Williams was a fun match. Sorry.
No.
Williams was a fun matchup just because that was the only series we came in as favorites. That's what made Williams so different. I think why we played so nervous. I don't think we got nervous until like Game 3 of the Grand Finals. That's when it finally hit us like we could win this. But until then, everyone expected us to go 0-8 on the final day. So we were just there.
Yeah, a hell of a performance indeed against, especially against BDS, 4-0 BDS. I think that's huge. Fear, what was your takeaway from the regional this time around? Was there as many big standout moments apart from Queso winning, or was it just, do you think that you was still crazy as it has been all along?
Yeah, I mean, I'll for the 3v3 stuff and the RLCS stuff, I haven't been able to watch it as much recently. A lot of it because I'll just be working during, or not, I guess not working on the weekends, but like I just am busy usually, especially during EU RLCS times, but I've been able to follow it more recently. And I'm stoked on Team Queso because I feel like in general, my stream and my stuff related to Rocket League for a long time has been highlighting all the young players who are coming up on the scene, who are dominating. And so to see Team Queso do it in the EU and threes as well is just exciting. It's fun. I wasn't even really watching Team Queso games because I was following Dig as a 1v1 fan. Of course, I followed Dig for the most part. And Queso took Dig down. And so, I mean, I knew they must have had potential, but they crushed it, man. And it's exciting for me to relay even harder to everybody how interesting it is that this 15-year-old age gap is like, how young could we have gone if they didn't have that, right? These players are showing up and instantly performing at the top level. So it'd be crazy if there were no restrictions, what the average age of teams and stuff would be. But I don't think it'd be much younger, but still, it's interesting to think about.
It definitely is. That is something I've never really actually considered, is the fact, you would have had players like Daniel, like Aqua, perhaps would have had a new Team Liquid, Oski and Atau, playing, of course, alongside a Chronic. It could definitely shake up the whole scene, but I think the 15-year-old gap, I think, is going to stay there for a reasonable amount of time. But, what to you, Nick, was the biggest shock of the EU regional, apart from, obviously, whatever? What do you think was the biggest shock?
Misfits losing to Singularity was crazy. That was big. I mean, it's obviously big for us because there's a chance that gets us into the major. Because I think Misfits is probably a team that should contend with a major spot. They've just kind of choked at the worst possible times, to put it bluntly. Because, I mean, they went 0-3 in the fall when they should have made the major. That was a big result to see them crash out after they'd just beaten Dig. That was surprising to me because I was watching the games and you just kind of felt like, nah, they're not going to lose. Nah, they'll come back. And then they just didn't. That was the big surprise to me this weekend.
Yeah, that was a big shock. Singularity, full stop. Of course, Team Queso are the first team since Team Queso to come from the qualifiers of regional to win a regional. Of course, that was a different Team Queso than it is now. Me and Craftman always make the joke that you're cheese proud. I'm sure, very, very proud at the moment of the team and how you performed over the weekend. But, wasn't just EU that existed in this weird bubble. It was everywhere else in general. It seemed like EU has infected the whole world right now with the craziness of the regionals and how it's gone. Because APAC North, Sub-Saharan Africa and SAM all having brand new winners. Furia, of course, finishing 7th, incredibly, 7th, 8th, which is just crazy to think about. So they could miss out on, the next major. You were talking about the major there. Is that the big goal for you guys now? 351 points in the bag, number 1 in Europe right now in the winter rankings. Is that the big goal for you guys?
I think our goals are still the same as they were at the start of the split, which were improve the Game 5-7 record, close out games better, and then 3 top 8s, 1 top 4, make the major. So we just need 2 top 8s and we've hit all our goals in a really, really dominating fashion. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and go, we need to win every single regional now, because that's just stupid. It's unrealistic. We've grown a lot, and we need to make it consistent before we can go, we're the best team in the world, even if we think it ourselves.
Yeah, it will. That's the one thing I think fear that most teams need to have is that consistency, and something that we've seen from teams like BDS, like NRG. What do you think it's going to take for a team like Team Queso or even Dignitas, who perhaps, in my opinion, have been the most stable team in Europe right now, even though they've only won 1 regional, they've made top 4 on every single occasion. Them and BDS, of course, made top 4 on every single occasion. What do you think do teams like Team Queso have to do to keep that consistency going for the rest of the regional and split? Sorry.
That's a good question. A good question that a guy who just commentates once maybe isn't the best to answer. But I think they got to continue to keep. I mean, I know Nick was talking about this earlier. They felt good and they felt confident when they were playing as the underdogs. They don't get that pleasure for a while. Even if they were to not perform on the next regional, I don't think people are going to forget this performance. So they're going to need to learn to play like those other top teams as a favorite, and be able to handle that when teams are gunning for you constantly. You become the target it's a different mindset, I imagine, and maybe one that they're not used to. But I don't know if Rocket League can switch back and forth so much based on more than just those little things. So that's what I would think, but I'm no professional on that.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah, definitely. As an endpoint caster, of course, I've watched them go from being, perennial underdogs to being, the team with the target on their back. And it's going to be the same for Team Queso now. How are you going to prepare the guys to deal with that? Because it's never easy switching from being a team that's seen as an underdog to a team that's seen as one of the best in Europe.
I think it. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know because we haven't had to experience it yet. The one thing I think did really help us is honestly, if you look at any social medias, most of the people are just calling it a fluke anyway, and saying Dig played bad, BDS played bad, which on the day BDS did play bad, and I think they would agree with that too. They could have a way higher ceiling than they showed. Most teams still aren't taking us seriously. Most people still don't respect us. We can keep playing that underdog mentality for as long as possible. Once we have to switch, we'll have to switch, but even in scrims today, everything felt a bit different. We were just way more confident, way more just relaxed, like, hey, we've done it. Now let's keep it up and keep our performances high. So I don't think it'll be that big of a switch, but it will be different.
It's interesting how people in general seem to focus on the downsides because I also am plugged into the RLCS environment as well. I did not see anybody doubting Queso, but maybe that's because as it's not my team, sometimes it's easier to focus on the positive.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say that because it's good to keep your edge, man. It's good to use those people who are negative as a way to keep the grind high, to keep trying to prove the haters wrong because you'll always have them. You could win
exactly.
a regional, they're never going to go away. So if you're going to use them as fire, I guess that's a good thing.
I mean, the first thing Gregan said to me afterwards, like even in the RLCS interview, was like it was a honeymoon. We've been a team for 8 months. I don't understand how we're in a honeymoon phase still. We lasted longer than his team has. Like we had been a team longer than his team was when he was with Guild because they made a roster move. So at the end of the day, it's whatever. Let people talk. We'll focus on ourselves, and if we get the results, let them talk.
Exactly. That is the way to look at it. It's a very mature mindset, I think, that definitely not honeymoon phase. The lads have been together for a while, as you said, and they've looked very good in the off season. Looked good. They had some stellar performances as well in the fall split. Maybe not reaching the heights that they could have, but obviously beating teams like Endpoint, like Dignitas, pulling them all close, well, getting to game fives a lot of the times with those kind of teams, or game sevens with those kind of teams. I think it's unfair to say it's a honeymoon when it's been consistent. Obviously now one of the top 8 teams in Europe, so guaranteeing yourself a spot in the next regional. So it's definitely, I had this argument with someone before that the top 5 teams in Europe are just switched constantly, but he said a certain team wasn't top 10, and I think that's been proven wrong multiple times already.
Does Queso know already for the next regional what seed they're going to be in, or what other top 8 team they're going to have?
I can tell you what the expected groups are based on, like, if the top 16 make it. I know our group for a fact, if we make it, who we get.
Because I was talking to Space Station last regional too, like right after, and they seem to already know that they're going to be they're going to be in a pool with Complexity, which they are. So they obviously had that, and I would imagine it's just based top 8 points. They seed right for the past 3 events. You should know who you're going to be up against, right?
So if the top 16 make it, we are 5th seed 100%. We passed Vitality in Final 3, even though they made Major. Our other top 8 team is Semper, which we have never played before. They have never scrimmed us, and we've never played them in an event. And then it should be Cuxer's Minions and 0-0, assuming the top 16 make it.
Yeah, it's 1, 8, 9, 16, 2, 7, 10, 15. Yeah, and then you can extrapolate from there, basically. The groups are set out in a certain way. Gibbs explained it in a video, I think. I will link that video down below if you want to go check it out, so later on. Or it'll be up here, actually, in the box, wrong side, that box up there. Fear, you're better at this than I am. Do not point to the box where it will be.
All right. Can I ask Nick a question? Because I thought that was interesting. you never scrim Semper. So I don't really know about the professional scrim scene. Maybe you guys both do, but I'm sure there's some audience members like me who don't know. Is there beefs or a reason why you wouldn't scrim a team like Semper? Did they think that it wasn't a worthwhile scrim for like what's the deal with that?
I You can ask them. I think we booked them once and they had to cancel because Casio was dealing with his landlord. Like ever since we formed as a team, there was a lot of teams that didn't scrim us until after the first regional, like in the fall. Like no teams actually scrimmed us.
I feel like there's a ton of potential drama underneath that we could try and unearth with team scrims and stuff, but we don't have
Nah,
to. But I just
the
think it's
only
interesting.
team, the only two teams that gave us respect from the start were Dig. We have scrimmed Dig since as soon as we formed, so mad respect to the Dig guys and Misfits. Misfits also gave us a ton of respect because I think they were in a similar situation. Everyone else, they waited until RLCS started scrimming us.
Yeah, that is. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more as well in the bubble scene. How that it's problematic that these big teams kind of, and this goes for Endpoint as well. Big huge Endpoint fan, obviously cast for Endpoint, but they can fall into that trap as well of only playing up to the opposition. I suppose you could say in quotation marks up. So kind of just playing teams around them, which I don't think is fair to teams like Misfits, teams like Queso, who deserve, who've shown throughout the off season. Fatir was lighting up the world during the off-season in the BS Plus competition and the Community Open. He was showing exactly what he was made of, and Joyo the same. He looked really good in some of the events, and obviously Rise is fantastic, a phenomenal player. So yeah, I think that's a problem. But I suppose we can go into the bubble scene now a bit if you want, because Nick, obviously this all came from a very, very big post by you, which is the reason I wanted to get you on the podcast in the first place. Your incredible twit longer about the bubble scene. Do you want to give a bit of a highlight on what that was?
Yeah, it was basically just a super long-winded way to say we need more tournaments for people under the top 16 so they can actually make a living in this game and continue to grow. Because I know a lot of people that I'm either friends with or friends of friends that have had to quit the game because there is no support outside of RLCS. And at least we used to have RLRS Spring Series, like pretty consistent tourneys. Not so much anymore. I think they've been falling away more recently.
Yeah, they absolutely have, and it was nice to see flashes of brilliance. Obviously, bringing up their 50k event, which started, of course, on Monday, which of course was very, very successful. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Fear, for you, obviously, you're a player. You're someone who brings up a lot of young players. You're involved a lot in the young players, especially in ones. Obviously, what do you feel the bubble scene is missing right now?
More ones. No, I think the bubble scene is. It's interesting how the community has to support it. People always talk about how Psyonix should do it, and I wonder if there's a right way to do it. And I know Nick just mentioned RLRS. I feel like RLRS was, I mean, that was still just the top 16 teams, right? I mean, it was like top,
Top 20. Yeah.
20 when they made it to 10. So it wasn't really technically supporting much more than RLCS was. But I know there are other organizations that used to run stuff. I haven't been tapped in with the bubble scene as heavily. But there's been, I mean, this AAA series thing, it sounds like we're going to talk about that later. This seems like exactly what people were asking for. And I know the community there's a lot of community members who are willing to try and fill a gap when it's expressed like that. Like I know Dazrin is going to start, he's doing his skirmishes and stuff again. I'm connected into the NA scene. I don't know if Nick was specifically talking about the EU scene, because I think this AAA thing is NA, and then Dazrin's thing is also NA. Is there stuff going on in the EU as well?
No clue. It's not something we would enter in. I was honestly doing it more for my friends that I talk with. I know there's also the Prestige, which is $20,000. Like that's what 70 grand into the NA bubble scene. That is perfect. I also think the format last fall was amazing. The 32 teams. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I would agree there. I think the 16 teams is very restrictive. Even the group stage, which was the spring split last year, was 20 teams. So that was four groups of five, with the top two going to the upper bracket, bottom two going, third and fourth going to the lower bracket, and fifth being eliminated from the group entirely, from the event entirely. But that I do feel 16 is very restrictive. I think it stops the bubble scene from growing more. I know there's not a lot of money anyway down the bottom of, like, if you finish 13th to 16th, you get like $1,000, which isn't a lot for an org. But obviously now with the new decals and stuff that allows sponsors to be on those decals, that's going to be huge when Psyonix do open it up to all teams and not just teams in the Rocket program. Queso, yes, Queso, need one.
No, we have one.
Yeah, so I know. Sorry, my bad. But yeah, hopefully there's more teams can come in and get those things. Like Williams Resolve, a team that finished top 6 don't have a decal. Do you think Psyonix supports those small teams enough, or do you think there needs to be more done by Psyonix on at least a fundamental structural level?
You want to go first or me?
You got it.
No. Just the simple answer is no. Right, let me pull up the RLCS rankings. So this is usually a pretty good indicator, right? First things first, they give big orgs decals immediately, which is great. They shouldn't have any question marks about that, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of stuff about like PWR shouldn't have a decal. Who cares? If anything, you should want more org decals, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And also, PWR is a huge org. Huge org. Give them a decal. But, right, looking in the top 16, who doesn't have decals? Navi, Cuxer's Minions isn't signed. So, Heroic, Luminosity. 0-0? No, right?
No.
So that's 4. Williams Resolve. 5 of the top 16 in EU don't have one. In NA, who doesn't have one? Oxygen. Oxygen are the main ones. Oxygen are actually the only ones. Oh, CLT, RBG. A lot of those, like, not consistent regional makers just don't have a decal, which I think is kind of...
Oxygen has one, doesn't they?
No, they had one from the old one. They didn't get one this season.
Yep.
Only what? Ground Zero and Renegades have it in OCE, and only Furia in Sam.
True Neutral as well have decal.
Yeah, which is weird but like, why don't we have a crew decal? Crew is a huge org in Valorant. Like, just give them a decal. It doesn't matter. Someone like Era that's been in Sam for quite a while. Noble has been in the scene for ages. Like, if you've been in the scene for over a year, give them a decal. There's no reason they can't. There will be someone who buys them. And if there's anything I know about Brazilians and South Americans, they are passionate about their teams. They will make those sales alone. Sandrock should have one. Ultimates, Falcons, Tokyo Verde. Back when Pulse had a team, they should have. Give us more options, man. Like, support those teams. Show that you are committed to the bubble scene. But not even the bubble scene, but like the lower tier pro scene. Mm-hmm. Just give them support. It doesn't matter. Let those fans be fans.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. What about you, Fear? What's your takeaway from it? And on a broader level, do you feel that Psyonix should be supporting these smaller teams a bit better?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how that. I'm surprised that you listed a lot of good teams that should have decals. And it's to the point where I wonder why they don't. And maybe sometimes I'm too quick to give excuses to people, but I wonder what the process of getting them made is. I don't know if that's because I work software too, to have an idea of like, I wonder what the legal stuff is to get them made. Like, I wonder how many hoops they have to jump through, because I would think like an Era or a Noble or a Sandrock like decal is something that both, I would think Psyonix would want that, and so would Sandrock. So like, I wonder what kind of problems they run into, because my guess is that, I think it's good to make sure we're putting out as a community what we like expect, like what we hope for, like people support, like Psyonix supporting these more than they are. But I'm just think sometimes the answers are super lame. It's like, oh, well, yeah, we wanted to get Sandrock something, but actually because this, it's going to take us a bit. Like, I think that's just the corporate world is sometimes that disappointing. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't keep encouraging the things we want to see, because I think they just might move way slower than the timeline that fans are going to hope for. That's what I'm hoping. Or maybe they'll never do these and it'll never happen. And then, I'm wrong. Okay. But
the one I don't understand is Williams, because they already have the F1 car in the game. Like, it's 90% done. Just give them a decal, right? Like, come on.
That's true.
But I also don't like how restrictive they are on the decals, but that's more of an artistic thing. Because I know I've seen a lot of, like, the original designs, because I'm friends with designers from other teams, and oh my god, they're so much better. But they're kind of forced into that, like, format.
Interesting. So they said they talked to teams. When they say they talked to teams, they talked like the roster, like you guys, about the potential decals, or just like
No,
team
they talk
page?
to the organization. Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes above us, and then they show us once it's already approved by Psionics.
Yeah.
But you're
so-
saying that there's a lot of cool ones that orgs make that Soundix goes, and no, you got to make it.
Yeah, like a bit more formatted.
Interesting. See, that's the juicy drama. People don't know. I didn't know.
Well, of course, as you probably do know, Psionics as well have to be involved in any tournament over $5,000, which I find a bit, I don't know. Like, if you're going to help the bubble scene, it's either commit to it in a way that you are giving money to the bubble scene, or else get out of its way. And Psionics seem to be doing neither, which is a bit problematic. I love Rocket League, I love Psionics, and I hate ragging on them, but the problem with the bubble scene I see is that Psionics just are a barrier to these kind of big tournaments happening. And it takes a lot of planning and organization in order for orgs to get around that, to get something going, like the AAA series, like the Prestige event, like even the female event that's going on soon, Radiant. $15,000, of course, on the line for that. It is so difficult, I find, to get these big events because, A, there's perhaps not as much attention given because Psionics don't advertise as much, and B, it's the 5,000 limit is a bit ridiculous, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. Are they? I guess they're worried about people representing their game that they don't agree with, and like the bigger money prize pools they can have, the more likely they're. Like, does anybody know the exact reason why they limit it at 5,000?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can say, but they don't want anything bigger than RLCS.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of tourneys that were supposed to happen, and the prize pool would have been bigger than what Psionics was already ready to support, so they kind of turned it down.
That kind of makes sense to me, right? They want their league to be the big league.
Yeah.
Like 5,000 isn't anywhere close. So I don't know. Is that just an old number from back in the day when they were just barely doing 5,000 or something?
It should be like 25. Like anything bigger than that, yeah. Like
Yeah,
have
yeah.
Psionics name on it, yeah.
I would
like
agree.
maybe 10, 15, somewhere in that range. Yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah. I know as well that there's so we've talked with the EU a little bit. We kind of drifted away from that a little bit, so we'll focus back on it. I know that there are plans for academy teams to exist. I know that the Dream Team Productions, run by Tofu Elliott, Sunderlad, and Astral, have been in talks with some orgs about forming academy teams. In order to have kind of an academy league, and as well they're going to try and run some bubble tournaments, talking to sponsors and stuff, so that's the EU stuff. But Flashes of Brilliance have come out and they've put a lot of money into this with, of course, AAA and I forget the other sponsor, but I'm not beholden to any sponsors today, so that's good. But how did you find it? Were you watching it? Were you interested in it? Were you keeping an eye on it at all? I know I was watching it all the way through, even though I'd work the next day.
I did not. I followed it. I followed the results, but I didn't get to watch it. The only event that's happened was yesterday, right?
Yeah, Monday, yes.
I'm looking at the results right now to go over them again, but I did not catch it live. What was the takeaway?
Manzana looked ridiculous. Paulo showing exactly why he is one of the most underrated players that should have a team in RLCS right now. E United doing well, looking good, coming back from Flashes of Brilliance, winning them early on. So a lot of teams looking very, very strong, and I think that's going to help them as well for the next regional qualifiers, because playing against each other is going to, who they're going to be playing against in the next regional, each other. So it makes sense to have that opportunity, which I think is the point of the bubble scene. It's that these teams play each other so that they can play up to other teams as well.
Tournaments in general are just better than scrims. Like it's always going to be a lot more fun.
Fear, I noticed there when I said Paulo is deserving of being on a team. You very much agreed. What's your takeaway on Paulo?
Yeah, Pollo's he is, or is it Paulo?
Pollo, yeah.
like,
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm
it's
saying it
chicken.
wrong.
All right, no, you're good. I didn't want to say it wrong. But anyways, he's just a recent 15. He was next gen guy. So when we were doing, when I did the most recent next gen tournament, which if you haven't heard of the next gen stuff, it's just a tournament for the under 15-year-old kids. It's 1v1 because there's that's what I would normally do. But I was trying to plan a 3v3 as like a show match during the last next gen event. And I had talked to Poyo because Poyo, who's also a next gen age player, he doesn't do as much ones, but I know he's a good threes player. So I wanted to get him involved with a couple of other NA guys. It ended up not happening just because I couldn't get the full rosters from both sides. But I just gave the thumbs up because that's a new, new 15-year-old, new next gen youngster. And I think those people are the future. So it's cool to see that Poyo did well and to hear you giving him such high praise because just more fuel to the next gen fire.
Absolutely. I was delighted to see players like Daniel and Aqua and even Zanil, who's really showed his stuff so far. I've always been a big Zanil fan ever since I watched him for Game Time. He's really brought that RBG roster to life, I think. What do you guys think about Zanil? Or he's into Zanil, Daniel, Aqua. Daniel, of course, Fear, number 2 on your list for ones players. So definitely a hell of a player, a hell of a talent, and great to see him getting such a big shot with SSG.
Yeah, Daniel's crazy. It was always going to be a big performance, a big show up for him. I mean, for the people who have been watching him since, maybe it was a couple summers ago when he didn't turn the game off and glued himself to the screen, where we watched him become just an unreal player. We always knew he was going to do well. But it's actually interesting because a bunch of the guys like Zanil and Poyo and Money and Expert, these guys, I actually saw them a couple years ago, and Nick actually as well. Nick, I think you played in the crew battle stuff, right?
I did. I beat Money.
One of the only times I ventured out of 1v1 stuff was to do some crew battle stuff around when Fusion happened. And a bunch of these guys who at the time weren't quite RLCS players are now all, becoming either part of the scene already or, starting to be on the top of the bubble. And it's interesting to watch them. Zanil was one of those guys that you brought up.
Yeah, definitely a very, very interesting player for the future, and definitely one that could carry RBG forward into the future as well. Speaking of NA, we'll talk about the bubble scene a little bit more. This regional qualifiers were absolutely insane. Again, NA starting to show some depth, perhaps.
I think NA depth is completely different to EU depth, though, is the only thing. I think anyone outside of 10th can make a regional event from 24th, because I think there's 24, 25 teams have actually made it in NA. But there's just an issue of NA. No one can beat the top 6. And I don't know if that's psychological, because ever since the start we've had was a G2, C9, NRG, right? The big 3. And now it's a big 4, big 5, big 6. It's just a huge difference in skill, I think. Or maybe it's just mentality. They're scared to go play these teams.
Of course.
Yeah, it's been away forever. Take it away.
No. You go, Fear. You go.
No, I mean, I don't have much else to say about that, but it is an obvious difference between EU and NA. It has expanded from just those 3 teams, because I remember watching back in the day in the league format and stuff, those guys were untouchable. And now there's way more opportunities for them to lose, and it's almost more impressive that they've shown that they're still, that the peak is always one of 4 or 5 teams, it feels like, which is it's just not that predictable in the other regions, in EU especially. And I mean, now the only other regions that are predictable, we talked about how it's unpredictable this week, but Middle East seems like the most predictable winner. But everybody else is mixing it up. It's crazy. But you're talking about the qualifier specifically. You were saying that the bubble scene has some deep parity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the qualifiers specifically. Yeah, I felt like the NA qualifiers were very deep depth-wise in terms of the teams that are in there and how close they were together. I still feel like teams like NRG, FaZe, SSG, G2 are just so far ahead of those teams, though, that it's difficult to bridge the gap. I feel like NA has made these super teams, whereas EU has kind of gone with, let's get this chemistry together and let's try and work hard and see if that works for us. I think NA has got, I don't know. Has it got more depth? Has it not got more depth? What do you guys think?
In the bubble scene or in the pro scene?
In both.
Bubble, it's probably NA. Just because I feel like you look at EU, you can pretty much predict like pretty much most of the top 20 of the top 24. NA, like there's actually some teams coming alive, like Circuitry. I'm gonna keep it real. I've heard of like one of these guys before this. No, I heard of them because they beat Oxygen, and I'm friends with LJ and Toasty. Only reason I've heard of them beforehand. I mean, EXE's been around for ages, right? They had a couple good results last season. Vibrant's going 0-3 is crazy.
Yeah.
They had a hell of a bracket though. CLT, Axorate, and that's PWR. PWR actually looks like a real team now. Forky's actually improved a lot, even though I know everyone memes on him, but he actually looks like a good player.
Yeah, it seems like Noxus and Ibra really bring him along in terms of that, just getting that drive. I think that's the one thing that perhaps Forky was missing before, his drive. But I see him streaming a lot now. I see him grinding the game a lot. He seems to be a lot more motivated. Perhaps that's due to the Noxus and Ibra. They look very, very comfortable together. Look like a good team, and I suppose they're going to be a team to look out for. But I would agree. I would say that the EU bubble scene is not nowhere near as deep as the NA bubble scene. The problem is that EU on any day it could be crazy, and anything can happen in the EU on any regional day. Whereas in NA, you're kind of expecting FaZe or NRG or SSG or G2 or Envy to be in that final, and it's not the most entertaining thing in the world, is it? It's good. It's good Rocket League at times, but that is that shock important, or do you feel that the Rocket League is more important for you?
I think you want to get good teams. I think you want to have good rivalries across regions. I think people latch on to those top teams anyways. So I don't know if it's that much of an issue that they're dominating. One of the things about being a fan of Rocket League in the past, when I watched and kept up the most with the esports, was either nowish because it's like not my job, but it's kind of a big part of what I do. But back when I was just a fan, I didn't stream at all, and I didn't feel like any part of it was like a duty. Not that I feel like it's a duty now, but you get what I'm trying to say. The league play format was super easy to follow, and that was because there were less teams and it was more consistent. And back then I'd be watching Rizzo because he's from Arizona on G2, so I watched G2, and I just I could watch all their games, and it was very consistent. I knew they were going to be a decent team. I think that actually helps for fans a lot. I think when you have a team like NRG who seems to have like an insane amount of fans because they're so good, I think it can make really casual fans more interested because they want to watch squishy videos and they want to go see if he's going to win. And when there's too much shaking up, that's great for the people who watch it all the time. They love to see the parody because they get bored of the consistent results. But I almost feel like new fans want to latch on to maybe not the best team, but a very, very good team, and that consistently gives them results. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to get new fans to have some consistent teams. And I also think that you can blame NRG and you can blame EU for having such a heavy top for the NA, because I think teams are going to continue to try and make these super teams that we're talking about because they need to, right? You go to a major and you see that EU has the edge, so you got to do something. I mean, I guess you go back and just grind out and get better yourself, but I think what players do a lot is try and make a better roster so they can compete better, either not just with NRG, who's dominating the region, they need to find a way to topple them, but also EU because they have the edge right now.
Nick, any thoughts on that?
I don't know. It's fun to see new teams. I will agree. It was a lot easier to follow. Like, I think that was probably the biggest complaint about our LCSX was now there's 32 teams. Oh, now there's 24. Now there's 20. Now there's 3 different formats. We're trying all different things. I mean, how it was hard to follow even as a coach. Like, we would get lost sometimes. Even, like, seating. Like, how confusing it is now. Like, everything is all over the place. It's like a textbook. But... Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think the EU-NA debate's close, no matter what, because it's a LAN, right? But it didn't have fans. And there's no way to say if NA does better with fans or if EU does better with fans. Maybe Sam does better, whatever, right? Mina, because everyone wants to see the underrepresented regions do super well. Everyone loves like that underdog story. That's why we were loved last week. And I don't know. I don't think there's a huge parity between EU and NA. Like, to be honest, I think if FaZe were in Grand Finals, I think they would have won the major. I think FaZe counter. I think it's kind of like that pyramid, or not pyramid effect, like a triangle, right? BDS counter NRG, NRG counter FaZe, FaZe counter BDS. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that's kind of how it would go. So I don't think it's really that big of a difference.
No, I would agree there that it's very close. I don't think there is any clear daylight between the two sides, between the two regions. I think it's very, very close at the top. And between all those big teams we saw, teams like Endpoint, play FaZe and have a very close series, even though it was a 4-2 win for FaZe, it was still a very close series. Obviously that second series in the NRG BDS series, best set was very close, went to game 7. So you can never really separate those two sides. But Fear, one question I want to ask you: is there any ones players that are coming up right now that you see breaking into the bubble scene, or even RLCS in the next year or two?
As far as I think the big one that is going to be a long time from now, and a player who seems to be a top talent. I don't know how much he's playing threes. Is Fast. Seems like he's another super young up and comer. Like, he started playing earlier than anybody. I feel like he was 12 when he was starting to play with some of the top people. And so I think he's still only 13. So we've got a long time for him, but he's already a top player. If he keeps it up like the rest of the youngsters I've seen who have had his ability at that time, it seems like he could be, a top player. I don't know how much he's focusing on threes. I don't know if he needs to just yet. He's got many years, but I know to follow like Drees, Daniel, Aqua, these other guys who were all kind of in a similar boat, who eventually are now in RLCS. A lot of that had to do with what they do in six-mans and what they do in tournaments and playing with other people in threes. And I'm not sure how much Fast does that. I don't know if he's doing that much. Nick might even know, but he's definitely a top ones player that I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up. But of course, it'll be a couple of years. He's still super young.
Yeah, I've heard of Fast, but I don't know much about him. Like, I know most of the names. I knew a lot of the older names. I knew Daniel coming up because I used to play with him in B+. I knew pretty much everyone you named from the start. Chronic is easily the player I've worked with the most raw talent, besides Vatira. Now it's Vatira. Before it was Chronic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what the deal is. I mean, do you know Chronic closely? I want to see Chronic. Yeah. I think it seems like he's had like IRL reasons to not be focused on Rocket League.
I swear every single regional, his parents are on like vacation. Like, his parents are super strict because I worked with him with Rejects. The kid, when he actually focuses on like comp play, he's crazy. We were the scrim demon teams. We never played together in tourneys, but one of my Chronic hockey, that team had like, we could have been top 8 if we could have played like we did in scrims.
Chronic's got the edge, man. Like not a lot of players that I've seen who seem to be clutch. It's like impossible to actually describe, and I guess I haven't seen him in ones, I'll say, because I haven't watched him enough in threes to say he's clutch in threes, but he's got like a winner's aura about him that a lot of the other guys who also ended up playing in the RLCS and stuff have as well.
I think he's teaming with 2Piece again. Like, for the upcoming split, like, I think they're actually grinding it out, and I'm sure 2Piece used to be a once grinder as well.
Yeah, 2Piece also used to be. He's like 15, right?
Yeah, he just turned 15.
I know about those guys.
Well, I suppose since we're talking about ones, we might as well segue nicely into our next topic, which is all about ones. There's no point getting Fear on if we're not going to talk about the one scene. And Fear, how are you feeling right now about the one scene? What's your feelings towards it? What's your feelings of the future for it? What exactly do you foresee for the one scene in 2022?
I'm happy to be part of the one scene. It's I think it's no surprise that everybody knows that Johnny has guided the one scene and everything that he's done. I think that Psyonix did cool stuff alongside Johnny, like the different Assault Mine 2, I think, was the first time Psyonix joined in with it. It's cool. And then the Smug was a great idea, a good format for 1v1 type events, like fights that people have been doing for a long time. So I'm in the dark on that kind of stuff. As far as what Psyonix wants to do with ones, it's not like they're talking to me. So I don't know. That'll be fun. I'm glad that I can, be a part of it. I think now it seems like my events are be considered relevant in the one scene, which is cool to know. But I ran a $5,000 tournament recently. That was one of my goals to run. We talked about the max amount you can run for a tournament. I've done that now. Now I'm not really sure what we're going to do, but the big thing is that RLCS changes the focus understandably. I mean, ones is always the second game mode, and 95% of the top ones players have a really solid threes team that they need to be focusing on during RLCS. So it's interesting. I'm actually starting to think about what I can do during RLCS splits, like we're in right now, that is still, what the players want to do, because that's what I notice is the interest from players drops very heavily. And so we'll probably won't see any big one stuff, I wouldn't think, until after the next major. And maybe nothing humongous from Psyonix until RLCS, until like the Worlds right over just in the summer. So I don't know how long till the next season, but I imagine that's July to do big 1v1 stuff. So I think it's been fun, man. 1v1, we've been I've been experimenting with this cross region stuff. It's been one of the big surprises. Guys like KV1 have kind of shown that you can do a series where somebody has more than 100 ping and have it not be, completely ridiculous. He's proven to win on that kind of ping. And then we had some about as insane as it gets. I tried to have this match not happen, but having the Sam versus Middle East final of the last tournament where, somebody's on 160, 180 ping and then winning the game. I think we stretched it too much. If I'm being honest, I'm thinking about in the future, probably not trying to mess with those super high pinging games again, even though I think it was fun for people to watch. And it does really highlight guys like KV1 who have mastered it, and Fahad, who also seems to be pretty good at it. The Middle East and South American guys, I think, benefit the most from those. So I haven't really had any plans for the future for what I want to do with ones, but I'm going to do something, and I'm thinking maybe it'll be back to splitting the regions onto their decent ping to see, what a tournament like that looks like again, because went gung-ho with the cross region.
Yeah, but I felt it was interesting to see that, though, to see these different play styles come across. And, because at the end of the day, these players have different play styles, ultimately, very, very different ideas of how to play ones, which is always interesting to see. Some players love closing down the space quickly, some players love shadowing, and it's all about, just seeing exactly what those different dynamics bring. I suppose, Nick, what's your opinion on ones? How do you find ones in general, or is it something you're not really that interested in?
I love ones. A lot of the players I've worked with upcoming, I think me and Fear actually have a pretty similar background. We've worked with a lot of really, really young players as they've come up. Like you mentioned, Poyo, I coached him when he was 14. Chronic, I worked with when he was 14, 15. Zanil, Parth, both of those guys I've had a lot of respect for the last year or two. I've told them they will go pro. Daniel, I've known since P+. All the ones players have come up have been just unreal. Vatira was a ones player.
Mm-hmm.
Vatira was a demon in ones. I love working with ones players because I think they have usually the most creative mechanics. That's why I like Joya, because he is a freestyler, right? He has mechanics no one else can do. Vatira has mechanics no one else can do. And it just elevates your game so much. I think one's probably the best game mode, but you still have to learn how to play threes. I think there's almost an issue in the scene right now, at least in NA. I'm talking with Beastabonium, all these kids have mechanics, but no one has the game sense. Where it used to be the other way around, everyone has game sense, no one has mechanics. So maybe that may be kind of a scary trend, but if anything, with proper coaching, they should be able to learn that, and they'll have higher peaks than some of the older guys who don't have the mechanics.
Yeah, I think that's in sports when, at least, I don't know how big this is in super high level sports, but definitely at club level sports at our college and stuff, you'd see a guy come in who has insane athleticism, which I'm equating to mechanics. And it's all right, well, we'll take him and we'll teach him slowly how the game works too, because you can't teach somebody to be 7'5" or whatever and huge. I think that's kind of like mechanics. These guys who are working on mechanics come in. That's the kind of stuff you just can do on your own, and you have to. Some people have put in the hours to have them, and some haven't. And then you could correct me, but it feels like that's kind of equivalent. You want to take those mechanics and try and teach them how to make it work in a
how to be efficient. Yeah,
the other way around. It seems like it could be harder to just tell somebody like, hey, you've just got to go get better mechanics. It's like harder to create, I would think.
Yeah, I would 100% agree.
I just want to point out that Joyo still gives me nightmares because he pre-jumped everything Endpoint did in the Invitational Qualifier, and it was ridiculous. And he just, every time he was correct, he just had psychic powers of reading every single thing that Endpoint were doing. So he still gives
You
me
want to know a
nightmares.
fun fact about Joyo and Endpoint?
Well,
That was who he was trying out with the entire offseason. He only lost that spot because he left Attorney to go play with Ryzen Materia, like the Mediterranean Open, I think it was called, and we won that, or they won that, and that's why they stuck together with him and Materia. So yeah, he had that tryout.
there you go. There's a
We need, man, that podcast exclusive stuff.
It's
Yeah.
like I mentioned on the RLCS broadcast, they all had the offer to try out with Dig as well in the offseason. I mentioned that, and no one picked up on it somehow. But
They picked in.
yeah, they picked Scrub. I think Scrub honestly wasn't that high on their list because I know they were trying to get like Khaled, Ahmad, all those guys, but obviously it's worked out for them.
I didn't realize that.
yeah, it's
I would've
ridiculous.
been, they're trying to get those guys to move.
Yeah. A lot of people try to get the Middle Eastern guys to move, and they've all just said no because of colleges or whatever.
Yeah, it's why
And I
it's-
know Joy. All my guys also had offers after the first split, and we all decided to stick together. But that was like Guild and Giants, and obviously one of those teams don't exist, and one of those teams don't make regionals. So I guess it was a good call.
Definitely a good call because regional champions right now sitting pretty on top of the winter major points race, and you're sitting pretty in terms of overlooking the defeated wasteland of teams that have fallen to the cheese, which is quite special. Fear, I suppose. Do you feel that ones is a very, very important aspect for bringing up players, for playing things like RLCS, for threes, for these bubble tournaments? Do you feel that ones is the basis now for kind of these players making true? Because all the players we've talked about so far that have really shown up in RLCS or showing up so far have been one's main starting out. So do you feel like ones is really, really important in terms of shaping the future of Rocket League?
Yeah, I think it's a good way for players to improve themselves, right? I mean, I know there's players who do it without ones, but it's crazy the kind of players that that ones creates and ones shows off. I think that Daniel and his dominance in ones was part of what gets his name out there. And at the end of the day, you can't do it with just ones. No huge teams picking you up because you're a great ones player. But doing both is smart. I mean, I think for player improvement, when you're grinding like crazy, you got to be including ones. It seems like to me, it's just like an easier path to try and work it without ones is tougher. And the guys who are coming out of ones all seem to be, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder whether or not the players are just the best and ones is the best place to prove it, right? Where you don't have other people to worry about. So it's just you on the field and you can show just how good you are against everybody else. Maybe they're just as good in every game mode, but the focus is less on them. I'm not sure. As not a top player myself, it's hard to say, but I feel like ones is a great path, especially for the next gen kids. I've seen too many youngsters who can't compete in their LCS, who find a way to compete at the high level and grind through ones to create their name and create their skills to transfer. Seems like a great place to start, but it's also not the exclusive place to start.
No, most certainly not. There is an argument made as well that twos is very good for developing mechanics. That's what I've heard from a lot of EU pros. That's why they play twos so much on streams, because it's really good for developing mechanics and also team play and spacing, which is really important in twos. Nick was nodding along now. He's not anymore. I'm worried. Does that mean that he doesn't agree?
Oh, what? Oh. Oh, no, I think ones just teaches confidence. Twos, that's why I think EU's better than NA. They take ranks so much more seriously. Every player in EU wants to be the top of the leaderboards in twos. I don't know why. It's an obsession, but they just want number one in twos. Like, you look at all the ranked leaderboards. I was looking at this with a couple of friends the other day. In ones, it's like 13 or 14 EU players, like 4 NA, and like 2 or 3 Middle Eastern. In twos, it's the exact same thing, where it's pretty much all EU and MENA. And I would assume that kind of correlates, where when they're playing to win, and they're playing to get better. They're not just putting hours effortlessly. There's the word. Yeah, I got there eventually. But yeah, they're actually playing to win and playing to get better. And maybe that's why EU kind of looks better, and everyone can beat everyone right now.
So I suppose for your caster, the caster, what's been your favorite casting moment so far in your career?
My favorite casting moment. I don't know. Casting, the recency bias always takes over. You know, I think casting the big games, like in this last tournament that I ran, casting Joriez is always fun, and specifically Joriez versus Moxie in the EU final was like just a great game because of the way Joriez likes to go down and come back. And the games that mean a lot to me are also like Daniel and Khaled. Daniel versus Khaled, I felt like was a great game to be a part of. I guess cast as well. Not too focused on the casting, because I think my casting, I don't know, it's more like I'm watching, I try and just watch the game with chat almost. So I don't think too terribly hard about like intense casting, but just games I've experienced and been able to host and stuff. Showing everybody Daniel against the Middle East guys, against Khaled and against EU, which happened on the same weekend, was one of the most exciting times for me in games to kind of host, because I felt like I knew, and I think people who were watching the stream knew, how special Daniel was at the time, how he wasn't just a good North American player, because in the one scene, it's so dominated by the other like EU region or even Middle East, and the narratives can be that all the NA players, you know, they're second best to all the top players in the other region. And I just knew watching Daniel that he was the best player, period, in the world in ones. And I wanted to prove it. So I convinced Khaled to play a game in this Middle East versus anything. And then I had challenged Johnny Boy over Twitter to create the NA versus EU event, which was really just a ploy to get Daniel against the two EU guys as well. And we were one tie away. I say we. Daniel did all the work. Daniel was one tie away from all the top three best players at the time, which I wanted to prove and wanted to be a part of showing everybody that this was truly the best player in the world. Mm-hmm. So that was probably that weekend of casting was huge. And then specifically the EU final in FearFest was really fun recently as well.
And then I suppose
Daniel's a demon.
Daniel is a demon. Daniel is ridiculous. First, I think he's the first player to score 2 0-second goals in a row. I think he might be the first to do that. Of course, Dignitas became the first team to perfect sweep anybody in the best 7 series. BDS having an off day that day, but Dignitas, that's what I mean. Like, Dignitas didn't have an off day in that final against Queso. I don't feel it did.
I think we mentally beat them on the disconnect goal. Like, if you remember, what was it, game 2?
Game 2, yeah, it was.
When they had the disallowed goal, where we called a pause, we got the goal disallowed, which honestly I'm not sure if we should have, but can't take it back now, right? And then as soon as we restart again, they call a pause and immediately start complaining about the decision. And I'm telling him, go fix your internet if there's actually an issue with it. And then we score the kickoff right after it comes back. It's like, at that point, I'd be mentally beaten too. Like, I felt bad for Dig on that, but benefited us. So I guess that's competition at the end of the day.
It is. And it's all about those little moments, isn't it? It's about having got the mental fortitude to fight through them. And I suppose that's a big thing. And I think that's a big thing in ones as well, isn't it, Fear? That mental fortitude. It's really, really important to have strong mentality, because if you crumble at all at once, there's no one else to help you. You're all by yourself. And if you lose the plot a bit, you're kind of playing yourself as well as playing your opponent.
Yeah, all the best players in ones have that iron will, and I actually think, you know, Jorias, who gets a lot of credit for being maybe one of the best ones players, like right now at the top. What impresses me the most about watching him play recently is how he's able to put in the top, like top competition, top skill level, while also seeming to be unaffected by what's going on in the game, what the state of the game is. I mean, he had some insane comebacks in this last tournament that he played in, and it never seemed like he was too bogged down by anything going on, which is just special because a lot of the other players, they can't do that. They're so affected by how the game's going. They play the score a lot, and he just had like, it's interesting because it's almost like, it seems like not caring energy. Like, oh, it doesn't matter if I win or lose. But usually that manifests in a very losing play style. People who normally are like, I'm not really too worried about whether or not I win or lose. They're really lackadaisical and they end up losing. But he found a way. He has a way of using that to win. You know, he keeps a positive mentality and keeps his game sharp despite being fairly carefree, it seems. And that's crazy. You know, that's crazy. I mean, some of the other top guys have it as well, the ability to be unshaken. And I think a lot of players are examples of players that do get easily shaken, and that can be what separates them between being just a good player who can get a couple good wins and being considered, you know, the best player. So it's a big part of the game, especially for the young guys.
I suppose, Nick, as well, how do you keep the lads, you know, focused mentally? Because that is, as we were saying, a very, very big part of Rocket League. It's not just a game of skill, it's also a game of will. How do you keep the lads motivated during any series, or how do you keep their head in the game when they're losing, perhaps, or even against Williams Resolve when it went to Game 7?
I mean, first to touch on Dig, I know they work with like a really good psychologist, so fair play to them. I basically do psychology on my team, even though I do not have a degree in it. I made for my minor or something, but I think they kind of picked me from the start because there's a lot of coaching options. I wanted to work with them. But I first of all, have known Joyo since he was 12. Second of all, I've won before, which sounds arrogant, but it's true. I've won with Furia. I've been in that situation of winning. And they kind of wanted that like calm head to go, it's not over until it's actually over. And I think I've done a really good job at motivating them constantly and keeping them, kind of trying to flatline them, right? Because there is that psychological theory of, if your highs are super high, then your lows are super low, if you're completely momentum based. If you can kind of isolate every single incident into, it's one goal. It's just one goal. Because one goal doesn't affect the next goal at all in Rocket League.
No.
It's not like you start with possession. It's not like the other team starts with possession. It's just 0-0. And just play it from there.
Well, we did have a question for you, Nick, from the audience. There, someone asked, why did you move to Europe? What was the reason behind that? Was there any big reason, or was just?
Yeah, I couldn't get a team in NA. I asked Envy and I got aired. So the next logical step was to go to EU. And I've known Joya for ages. I coached Howard right at the end of the split. I helped them get their first like actual regional, even though they had already beaten like BDS, Solary, all these teams, but they hadn't gotten over that step of making a regional. Mm-hmm. So Joya had already worked with me previously. He discovered Vatira. No one else did. And he was the one who said, I want to team with Vatira. I said, all right, I'll trust your judgment. And then we went with Rise. We talked to a few other people. I think it was basically between Rise and Demensa and maybe Flame, but Flame never ended up trying out. So we ended up sticking with Rise, and it's just worked since then.
Yeah, it's worked out very, very well indeed. Question for you, Fear, and for myself, I believe. What got us into casting? What got you into casting? I know you say you're more a host, and you're more someone that enjoys Twitch chat, but you do a bit of cast as well. What got you into it?
So I have been watching the game since the beginning, or playing the game since the beginning. I originally started streaming because I had finally gotten a computer that could do it. and I thought that my champ gameplay was something that everyone wanted to see. So I did that for a while for fun, and then I realized that I maybe did want to try and like have a stream that people were interested in watching, and I knew what I wanted to watch was basically my favorite streamers, Johnny Boy. I knew he casted and streamed, and that was the kind of streams I wanted to watch, so I figured I'd emulate it. And that's when I started casting. I thought maybe I could do a good job. I knew I would never, ever get there with my gameplay. I was very realistic with that. I knew I wasn't good enough. So I thought, I'm kind of good. Maybe I could cast and get into that and see if I could get myself part of the scene that way. And it seems like it's kind of worked so far.
It kind of worked. I think it's worked very, very well for you in the nicest way possible. I think it's worked very well. For me, it was just COVID. I was bored. I'd always kind of commentated stuff in my head, like random stuff as a kid. So I was kind of like, maybe I can try cast in Rocket League, and it's gone from strength to strength, obviously. Working with Wild, working with Endpoint, working with XSET, working with loads of different orgs. I've cast 6 of the 8 regions now, so it's pretty epic. But I suppose that's. I don't think there's anything more to talk about, is there? Or do you guys have anything you want to bring up before we wrap it up for the night?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, big shout out to Bodhies for coming on. Do you guys have any things you want to plug? Any socials? Any events? Any shows? Your streams? Whatever. Is that what you, Nick? Anything you want to plug? Or anyone want to thank? Big shout out to anyone.
Follow me on Twitter at NickOnRL.
That will be down below as well. Make sure everyone, you go down below. All the links to whatever they mention here will be down below, so you'll have a chance to follow them there down below. Fear, what about you? Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to say? Anyone you want to shout out?
Follow me on Twitter at Fear Twitch, and on Twitch it's just Fear FEER. And I'll shout out anybody who has ever played on my stream, man. You guys make me, so I appreciate that.
Well, I hope he's had fun. Hope he's will come on again at some stage in the future. I know that Nick is going to be very, very busy over the next few months, not just weeks. Yeah. Hopefully, we heading down to wherever the next region, wherever the next major is. And Fear, obviously, hope that everything goes well for you. That is going to do it for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you all. Hope to see you all next week for yet more episodes of Triple Commit, which would be Darku and Chief Beef, both content creators in the Rocket League scene. So excited to have them on. But for now, we're going to say goodbye. Good night.